You're listening to TCR Radio.
Hello, can you tell me who you are?
I'm not quite sure, but I think yesterday I was Frank Westworth. I might be the same today.
Okay, hi Frank.
I'm terrified by microphones. I used to be a musician, you know. Microphones scare me, something's wrong.
What music did you play?
Loud and bad.
What instrument?
If it has strings, I can bend them.
Jolly good, excellent stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about your sort of how you started in writing, your inspiration, and then maybe go on to tell us a little bit about what you've written?
Okay, I've been writing full-time since 1986, but I write non-fiction. And the problem with writing non-fiction is it has to be accurate, and you can't tell the truth. You can never tell the actual truth of what happens around you. And people used to say to me all the time, well, why don't you tell the truth? You can't tell the truth in non-fiction, so you can tell the truth by telling it as fiction, which is what I started doing. I'm fascinated by people. I write about things, but I'm much more interested in people. So I started writing books because I was interested in telling people what they look like from the outside. No one likes the way they look from the outside. That is the truth.
So tell me about the books that you've written now that you've got here on the table. We've got A Last Act of Charity, The Corruption of Chastity, and The Redemption of Charm.
Charity, Chastity and Charm are three sisters, and they have a family business. Their family business is contract killing.
Oh, I love it.
Why not? My own sister was in the army, my brother was in the army, and what they did for a living was basically kill people, and they get paid to do it. And I thought, what a great idea. Rather than getting paid £25,000 a year to be a soldier, why wouldn't you want £25,000 a hit? Because you could probably do one a week if you worked hard. So I wanted to write about a family business that with a little difference.
Yeah, it certainly is an easy way to make money. I know the only assassins I know anything about are the ones in Ankh-Morpork, but these, I take it, are a little bit more lethal.
They're all based on real people.
Okay.
My sister's first husband was in the Herefordshire Regiment and spent most of his time in Northern Ireland on voluntary extra tours of duty because he liked fighting. And I was absolutely fascinated by this because I'm totally pacifistic, as you'd hope. And so he explained to me why he did it. And he just likes fighting people and likes killing people. He volunteered for the Falklands and is a decorated hero of the Falklands conflict. And I used to say to him, well, why do you do this? And his answers were so strange that I wanted to write them up as fiction. Like I said, in fiction you can tell the truth, and the truth is actually in here. The other side of the world is the semi-hero, the central character who runs through all the books, is a musician, and I was a musician all through the 70s. And after the Jimmy Savile scandals, you cannot tell the truth about what life as a musician in the 70s was like, but you can if it's fiction.
That is actually quite an interesting concept that had not occurred to me before, and a little bit shocking and sad, really, when all's said and done. What's coming next?
There's the fourth book in the trilogy, which is on its way at the moment. Douglas Adams said every good trilogy has 4 books in it, and it's true, and that's because of reader demand. Rather gratifyingly, the readers wanted to know what actually happens after the end of the 3rd book. Unfortunately, I've got so much actual paid-for work to do that it's going to wait another year or so before I can get around to it, sadly.
A nice problem to have, though. Thank you very much. Sure. Hello, Richard. This is I'm now talking to Richard D, who's an author of quite a lot of books and an incredibly prolific writer. It's difficult to know where to start asking you about your work, but sort of what got you started, and what sort of inspirations do you draw on?
Okay, hello Ollie. I'm Richard D. I write science fiction and steampunk, drawn from experiences and situations I've seen in life, really, and I turn them around and put them in a different setting.
Brilliant. Okay, so which is of these books that you've got here? We've got Myra, which I've read, which is excellent, and Myra is a prequel to Freefall, isn't it? But the first book, you said the first book that people should read was Ribbon World, I think.
That was the first.
Sorry.
So yeah, Ribbon World was a standalone, but it's the first of a series. The second one will be out later this year, called Jungle Green.
Yeah, I think when I said to you, if you were trying to sort of tell your reader where to start to kind of get into your books and to really appreciate it, you're perhaps most proud of Ribbon World. Did I get that right?
Yes, I think so. Ribbon World, it took quite a while to write, and I like the story, and it's had some very good reactions. So yeah, that's probably the best one to get you into Richard D.
Brilliant. You are quite a prolific writer. Presumably you've got quite a lot more. Oh, sorry, I didn't mention Andorra Pet and the Ort Cloud Cafe in my summary of the books on here. You've got, so you're a very prolific writer, so presumably you've got more books in the offing as well.
Yes, the sequel to my steampunk adventure, The Rocks of Azerol, will be out in November, all things being equal. The sequel to Ribbon World will also be out this year, and I've written a sequel to Andorra Pet, which we hope to get out sometime early next year.
Fantastic, that's phenomenal. Do you do sort of author visits and trips and stuff like that to promote the work, or are you more of a solitary writer and hope that people will just enjoy the work and then want to buy more?
I started off solitary, but I'm getting out and about more now, and I'm always available should I be required.
That's a definite hint that you can book Richard D for author visits anywhere you want.
Yeah, just leave me a message on my website or catch me on Facebook or Twitter, and I'll get back to you straight away.
Do you want to just quickly give us the website address?
Yeah, the website is richardsci-fi.co.uk.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Ollie.
Story that a lot of people like. There have been ballets and operas and books and poems and goodness knows what else written about him, and I thought, why is he so interesting? And then when I did my research, I thought, oh, he really is interesting. And I read a witness statement of a servant girl at the time who I just fell in love with her voice, and I thought, all right, I want to know what it was like to be a servant in that time, how frightening it must have been and how vulnerable she was and what happened to her, and that's why I wrote the story.
And that is actually one of the really nice things about your story, is it's written almost entirely from the perspective of this servant girl. So we're seeing history from the perspective of an ordinary person, and most of us are ordinary people, and we're not kings and queens, and we're not princes, and we're not generals and great leaders. And I find it really, really fascinating to read about history from the perspective of the ordinary person. The worst of it is I haven't quite finished your book because I got interrupted because I had to read Sue Bristow's book urgently. And I'm going to talk to Sue very shortly. But what have you got coming up next, Cathie?
Oh, well, I'm going to remain in Italy. I'm writing another book which is dual narrative, which is set in the present one chapter and then back in Italy. But this time I'm only going back to World War II because there are a lot of British soldiers in Italy in World War II, and some of their stories I really think need to be told.
Oh, without a doubt. The story of World War II in Italy is not often told enough, and there's some fascinating stuff that went on there. Thank you so much. Look forward to reading that. So I'm now talking to Sue Bristow, who is a conventionally published author, traditionally published author. And let me ask you, how did that come about?
Well, it started when I won the Exeter Novel Prize, and an agent took me on the back of that, and then we went down the route of her submitting it to various publishers. I've got the usual list of rejections, and finally an acceptance.
Which is just so exciting because you've written this book. This is Sealskin, and is it okay for me to say that it's a little bit controversial in some circles, or shall we skirt around that subject?
No, that's fine.
All right. So, yeah, Sealskin, it is a little bit controversial. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's the case?
Okay, it's based on a legend, the Scottish legend of the Selkies, which are seals which can take off their skins and come ashore in human form. And the legend states that a fisherman saw some of these Selkies coming ashore and becoming young women. And he hid one of the skins so that the girl couldn't return to the sea, and he took her home to be his wife. Now, it's usually told as a romantic story, but in fact, of course, there's a bit of a darkness there because she had no choice. She is effectively abducted, taken from her home, the sea, and taken to be the wife of this man whom she hasn't chosen. So I wrote it from the man's point of view because I wanted to think about how that could possibly work and whether there was any redemption to be got out of such a terrible beginning. And otherwise, of course, it doesn't ring true. There couldn't have been a happy marriage unless you think about perhaps the man really wanted to make amends. Perhaps the girl had it in her to forgive him. And then you have the beginnings of an interesting story, and that's what Sealskin's about.
Yeah, and I think you handled a very delicate balance between the terrible crime that he has committed, and it's unforgivable, really. But also the fact that if you feel sufficient remorse, there has to come a point where forgiveness is at least grudgingly given. And I think you've balanced it absolutely perfectly. And I think most people would agree with that. There have just been a few people who have dissented and said, you know, it's really unacceptable, and how can you base a book on such a premise? But then again, it's a legend that you're retelling, and not to cover that would be absolutely hopeless, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the bones of the legend are unavoidable. That's the way the story goes. So it's a bit like a Shakespeare tragedy. You know there isn't going to be a happy outcome, but the journey in between is where the doubt creeps in, as Hilary Mantel said in her Reith lecture the other day about historical fiction. It fleshes out the bones of history, and this is fleshing out the bones of the legend. The bits where you say, hang on, how could that work? What happened there? What was he thinking? So that's what I've tried to do.
It seems from reading the book that you've got a very good understanding of the intricacies of social life in a very, very small and close-knit community, and that the village in which the fisherman grows up is incredibly close-knit. Everybody knows everybody else. Did you grow up in a very small village yourself?
I kind of did, actually. I grew up in rural Surrey, in a village where everybody who didn't have money went to the local school, and nobody who did have money did. So there was an underclass, if you like, and yes, everybody did know everybody else, and it was pretty, I won't say incestuous, but close-knit, yes.
What's coming next from the pen of Sue Bristow? I noticed you got your herbal medicine chest and herb handbook here as well, so you've got some non-fiction as well. Do you want to tell us anything about that?
Well, my profession is a medical herbalist, and one of the characters in Sealskin is a herbalist because of that. So I've written a couple of herb books in the past before I turned to fiction, and those are still available on Amazon, I think. Yeah, so that's my non-fiction output. What I'm working on now is another novel, but my publisher wants to put out a short story of mine on Kindle, and that one is another legend-based story. It's about trolls.
Fantastic. Is that the Norwegian legend trolls, yes?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you for talking to me. Hello, Loreli. So this is Loreli Amiti, and you predominantly write children's books, am I right?
At the moment it's children's books in English, because I also publish in German. I'm writing fiction for adults, historical fiction, time travel, but because it's only on the German market so far, it will be on the English market in 2019. So on the English market, you're totally right, it's basically children's at the moment.
And so you write also in German, and you're fluent in German, and I think you're also pretty much fluent in Italian, aren't you?
Yeah, to be very fair, I've always been good at languages and really, really bad at math, so nature has been really fair.
Yeah, so tell me about some of the books that you've got here today.
I've got two picture books with me here today. One is The Moon Lantern, and the other one is The Solstice Fairy. And each of my picture books has a theme. Like The Moon Lantern is about braving a new challenge and embracing the beauty of change. And The Solstice Fairy is about showing responsibility and discovering a bit of magic. And the time travel books I've got here, unfortunately they're only in German so far, but the English ones will come out in 1.5 years. They're about the former GDR, the east of Germany, and a chapter that has really influenced me my entire life, because I lost a friend there to the system. And it's not as dramatic, it sounds really dramatic now. The pictures, the books are actually full of humour, and they're written in a funny way as well. But it's a thing that really influenced me, so I always wanted to write a trilogy about that, and now I have.
Is it true that when the border opened up and there was no need for the Stasi anymore, all the Stasi people became taxi drivers? Because when you got into their car, they would say, "Oh, don't worry, we know where you live."
To be honest, I've never heard that before, but that would be hilarious. That would be absolutely fantastic. Now, I don't know if they did become taxi drivers in the end, but you're very right. They would have known where you live, what you wanted for lunch, and everything.
So, how come you're so? You said you're naturally gifted at languages, but did you have a head start? Did you grow up in Germany or Italy or something like that?
I did. I was born in Germany, and then I grew up in Italy, and afterwards in Austria and in Slovenia. And I've lived in these countries for a really long time. And I came to England 7 years ago. So it's not my first language, but I'm trying. I have better days and I have worse days.
I must admit, I do love your accent. It's just that very, very subtle hint of something, and you're not quite sure what it is, but that would make a lot of sense given your movements around. So we already know slightly what's coming next from you, because you're going to have the English translation of your time slip novels, but you're also working on an Italian translation of the children's stories at the moment, because I know, because you were asking about La Luna Lanterna or whatever it is. Exactly. Oh, lovely accent. So yeah, have you got anything else you want to tell us about what's coming next?
Yes, they are. The Solstice Fairy is the first one that has been translated into German, Italian and Spanish now. It's all on the market now. The Spanish version probably isn't yet, but the others are. Everything will be translated into these languages because this is our biggest market where we have most of our customers. And the next book out will be Halloween Holler, about the cats and dogs of Exeter, the cats of the north and the dogs of the south, and they want to take over the city, and of course things get awfully wrong. It's a very funny picture book about a place that I love. And I had to put in cats because my daughter is probably the biggest cat fan in the world, so it had to be about cats, I'm afraid. And then in the winter there will be these books again, the Moon Lantern and the Solstice Fairy, and in the autumn we have Ostara and the Bouncy Bunny coming up. About Ostara, the beginning of Easter, the pagan festival. Ostara is a fairy who's falling down from the sky, and she wants to go back up, but she doesn't know how, and she has to find a magical bunny that bounces high enough to catapult her back into the sky. It's a very funny story as well. And then to finalize that series of different seasons, we're going to have in the summer Midsummer Buzz. And Tim is always, who's also in the Solstice Fairy, is always the boy who can see fairies. He's in every single book, and he will conclude the whole series in the summer.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Kids are obviously going to love that. Have you got stuff coming up? Are you going to be out and about and displaying your wares in other places? And also, can you give us your website address?
Of course I can. Well, my website first, maybe. That's www.loreliamiti.com. So basically first name, surname.com. And events, yes, I'm going to be in Exeter Library in August. I don't have the date in my head now, I'm afraid, but it will be in August. And I've got, at the moment, I'm talking to Waterstones in Exeter, and I'm going to be at Waterstones as well. So maybe W.H. Smith, but this hasn't been set in stone yet.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lorelei.
Thank you so much. It's so good to meet you.
And you. I'm now talking to KY Eden. Do I call you KY though?
No, you can call me Chris or Chrissy.
Thank you. Okay, Chrissy, your book, your series, the Redcroft Journals, 3 stories, 2 finished and published. Do you want to tell us what inspired you to start writing them in the first place?
Well, I've started off in drama and performing arts as a young girl, so I've always been interested in the creative industries and that sort of thing. I ended up teaching in the area, and predominantly teaching sort of teenagers in drama, and my inspiration grew from them, really. They were just their imagination, I got to learn about the things they loved, the stories they wanted to tell, and their performances just made me want to write, so I came up with a story from there.
So you penned the Redcroft Journals, the Missing Journal Volume 1, and you published that initially just on Kindle, is that right?
Yes, I published it initially on Kindle just to sort of gauge a reaction, and obviously publishing is new to me. And now I have a publisher, Blue Poppy Publishing.
Ah, yeah, Blue Poppy Publishing. Tell me about... So, in all sincerity, tell me about Blue Poppy Publishing, although I already know.
I don't know if I can tell you any more than you already do. Yeah, so it's nice really to have them the books out in print really, and just to sort of have them in in real form rather than on the internet. So
there's something really quite special about having a physical book in your hand and being able to show somebody that's my book, especially when your covers are so gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really pleased with the covers. In fact, it's a bit like having a baby. When they were first done, I kept looking at them, falling in love. I like them that much, and it hasn't worn off yet, so that's a good thing. I still love them.
Yeah, I think the covers are definitely going to make people want to pick up the book and have a look. And I've read the first two, and they're both superb. Well, I had to read them. But it was a genuine pleasure to read them and to format them and get them set up. Blue Poppy Publishing, in case anyone is still bewildered about our giggling about it, is of course my publishing company that I set up last year to publish my books, and then found ourselves taking on we've taken on 3 new authors already, yourself and Ben Blake and Johnny D, who are all bringing out or have brought out books this year, and it's kind of getting quite exciting because it's almost turning into a proper business.
No, it's great, and it's great to have experienced people sort of come alongside you and mentor you as well, and we can all learn from each other's mistakes, which we probably will do. But it's nice, and it's nice just to keep the books alive, because these days everything's gone so much towards television, Netflix, and which is great, but just to keep the stories going on paper.
I think it's so important to have paper books or word books as opposed to books on film, because if you think of, for example, Harry Potter, the books contain so much more information than is actually given to you in the films, which they've cut out such huge chunks of the books in the films. Whilst the films are great fun, they don't tell the story that J.K. Rowling set out to tell, in my opinion anyway. Would you like to see somebody making a film of your books, or a TV series, or what?
Oh yes, I definitely think there's a film there. No, I'd like to see them from a performing arts background as well. I'd like to see them performed. So yeah, I could definitely see that they would. I wrote them actually with very much screenplay in mind when I first started off, as that was where my when I graduated and went into postgraduate education myself. That was my area. So yeah, I don't know if I'd want to perform in one, and if I did, who I'd be.
I'm just thinking, like my Time Tunnel series, I kind of thinking that the Redcroft journals would make an absolutely fantastic CBBC TV series, along the lines of Tracy Beaker and that sort of thing. Be a better thing. Can you tell me what's coming next from the pen of K.Y. Eden?
Well, I'm working on the third in a series of the Redcroft journals, which is called The Line Scrolls, which should be out in approximately 10 to 12 weeks. So that's the next one, and then there'll be one more after that to sort of complete that story. So I'm still working on that. I'm also
that'd be the 4th book in the trilogy, yeah. We've already had
trilogy. Yes, the 4th book in the trilogy. Actually, what is the word for a 4th book in a trilogy?
Well, it just we had it earlier. Talking to Frank earlier, where he said, I'll be writing the 4th book in the trilogy, and we both laughed, and we both know that almost every trilogy that's ever been done has ended up having at least one sequel.
Yeah. And I think it's because you get to that point where you know the story, you've set it out in your mind, you've got your 3 books, and you think, but I've got some ends here I need to tie up, and if I don't, then I'm going to have some unsatisfied readers, and his story's going to be bubbling in me. So
the truth of the matter is that there are, of course, no beginnings and no endings to any stories. There's always, you can go back to the very beginning, to the Big Bang, and that's the only beginning there is, and the only ending is the the big crunch. So everything else that happens in between is potential for another book.
So there might be a 5th. No, I'm only joking. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think no. I've got it planned in my mind and what I want to do. So unless I suddenly have a kind of strange change, or should I say my characters have a strange change, then I think it's going to be, I'll probably stick to 4.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Ollie.
You're listening to TCR Radio.